I have never ever stood in the field and felt weak or scared or broken. There's always been a higher force at my back that has supported me and kept me strong and allowed me to bear witness and just do what I need to do. And I've never understood what that was in my unconscious, conscious state, right? But I've always been grateful for it. And it's all of those things. It's the support. It's believing in what I'm doing and knowing the power of what I'm going to do when I take it back to my team in Australia and what they're going to do with it next and what we're going to do now to honor the suffering and to honor the teaching of these animals for the greater good, so all of those factors combined are what gets me through all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And can we talk, you mentioned the I mean, that's the other thing I didn't even think about, that all the gear that you've got to put on, because these are, Animals Australia is not some, you know, I can't even think of the words. It's not some itty bitty organization that doesn't know what it's doing. It's very sophisticated. And so these investigations, you're wearing sophisticated gear.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like you're the FBI for the animals, right?
We are. We really are. We really are. Yeah.
Which that would it's like what you said around when you're watching on the TV someone else's investigation, how disempowering that is. And I was going to say that, yeah, when you're the one who's out in the field in your get up, you got the higher force, you got your team back home, they've got your back, how empowered you would feel, because you are getting to shine a light on the truth, on what is happening, on what the industry is complete opposite to what the industry is saying about, oh, it's humane, we don't look after our animals. Like BS, right? Before we get into today's show, I just wanted to give you this little message, a little bit of an introduction. So this is a beautiful chat with a dear friend of mine, Shatha Hamade from Animals Australia. And it's a very big, broad conversation, but I just wanted to flag that on the issue of live animal export, which is really the core of Shatha's work, and it does come up in this conversation today. Live export is often in the news, or it may not always be reported about, but there is always stuff going on, and Animals Australia is always watching. They have got their ear to the ground. It was recently in the news in February when approximately 16,000 Australian sheep and cattle were destined to be exported to Israel, despite the fact that there was at that time, I mean, it's ongoing, but at that time the conflict was escalating and vessels were being attacked in the Red Sea. So these animals were sent back, and then the exporter applied for a new permit to send them via a much longer route that would see them at sea for 60 days. Luckily, the Australian government did reject that application, did say no, but they since applied for a new route which would go quicker to Israel, but wouldn't be going via the Red Sea. Now, as at last week, which was the latest that I could find on the Animals Australia Instagram account on their page, the journey for those animals, there was some time where they were offloaded, but as at last week, their journey had lasted for 77 days. Now, in live export, there's a lot of cruelty and a lot of suffering that happens. The best place for you to find that information is the Animals Australia website, but there are things like transport stress, heat stress. There's not even a requirement in Australia that a vet must be on board, and animals can get sick and die on these ships, especially when they're going to those very, very hot countries, and especially when they're on board or on the port for really long periods of time. So it is an issue that is dear to my heart. It is an issue that I am very passionate about. And I just wanted to mention that going into this chat today, because it's something that can easily be pushed under the rug. If we're just watching mainstream news, we don't often hear about what is going on in terms of the live export of Australian animals to foreign countries, right? And so, this information is hidden occasionally when there's enough outrage. right? People power, it hits the news. But Animals Australia is always investigating. You can see all the investigations that they've done on live animal export and many other topics involving animals on their website. But I just wanted to really flag that. This is a beautiful conversation today. It is very, there's a few, like, even though we are talking about Shatha's work, we also are and the emotional toll of that work. We also talk about the purpose of animals, their role as teachers. We talk about animal consciousness. We talk about lessons of kindness and compassion, how to bear witness without judgment. We talk about, donkeys and butterflies. There's a lot of beautiful pieces to this conversation today. There are some parts, where that can be a bit not so nice, but there's nothing that we really go into deep, gory detail. So if you are like me and you do get a bit sensitive around animal issues of animal cruelty, this is not a show about animal cruelty. Yes, we talk about it, but it's much bigger. I mean, that is big. I don't want to discredit the importance, right? But this show goes much beyond that, right? There's a lot of love. Like, we've even infused this conversation with love. You'll hear that if you make it to the end of the show. So it's a beautiful chat about animals and spirituality and empowerment and what we can do to help animals. If we're not like Shatha and we're not out there taking direct action, what can we do when we're here sitting at home to help these animals? We talk about that too. So I really hope you enjoy this show. I loved having this conversation with Shatha. It was the first it was the first interview or guest chat that I recorded for the podcast. So I really hope that you enjoy it. Many, many more to come. I'll leave you now with that. Here at the Natural Animal Podcast, we share thoughts and ideas about the nature of animals, preferences, their behaviours, their ways of being, to engender a greater understanding, respect, compassion, and love for all animals, companion, farm, and wild. And today I'm so excited to bring with you a wonderful, fantastic guest who I love to bits, Shatha Hamade. I first met Shatha many years ago when I was legal counsel for Voiceless, the Animal Protection Institute in Sydney, Australia. And my memories are a bit vague of that time, but I'm pretty sure we would have hit it off straight away. And I mean, I love Shatha to bits, and I'm sure you're going to love her too, but she has dedicated her life to fighting for justice for animals. She is She is legal counsel and lead investigator for Animals Australia. Before that, she was a prosecutor and legal counsel of RSPCA in South Australia. And earlier in her career, before she stepped into the world of animal protection and animal justice, she worked in commercial law in Melbourne, Australia, and as a judge's associate in the Federal Court of Australia. Now, as part of her work with Animals Australia, Shatha regularly carries out undercover investigations into the live animal export industry across the Middle East and North Africa. Really, really important work. She engages in legal advocacy and litigation for the purposes of animal protection and has mounted various legal challenges on behalf of animals. She also regularly guest lectures at law schools across Australia. And I'm sure you will appreciate that the importance of balance. Now, Shatha keeps herself in balance by working hard, laughing hard, and eating her way through the enormous amount of delicious plant-based eateries that are always popping up all over her hometown in Melbourne. So, Shatha, welcome to the show.
Oh, very, very nice to be here. Thank you for having me as a guest. I'm very excited.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you. Like, when I first decided I was going to run this podcast, I was like, Shatha will be perfect because of the
Thank you.
the amazing work that you do for animals. And I can't wait to introduce my audience into this work that you're doing and how hard you work and how dedicated you are to fighting for justice for animals. So I would like to start off and just a little, pardon me, I don't know yet because, we're doing this like in the moment. There may be some parts of this, listeners, there may be some parts of this conversation that might be a bit difficult to listen to. But I ask you to bear with us. Like, this is important stuff that we're talking about. It might be absolutely fine. I don't know yet. But we'll just work through it, and we'll see how we go. It really is just about understanding the work that Shatha does and how important it is and how much of a difference people can make for animals in this world. So, first of all, Shatha, I would like to start off with helping my listeners to learn more about your journey to the work that you're doing today and how you got here and why, what motivated you to go down this path. So let's start with how.
Sure. So, um, so I'm happy to tell you my age. I'm 45 years old, and I was born in Sydney to Lebanese parents who were migrants from Beirut. They fled the war in the civil war in the 70s, and my brothers and sister and I were born in Sydney and raised in Sydney. And very humble existence. And studied hard at school, went to university, but was a very conservative family. Never really questioned, where my food came from, etc. I mean, we're a good family. I'm, a very good person growing up, very kind, but my circle of compassion and my social awareness wasn't really, back then. And this is pre-internet, right? Pre, having access to all this information. So I just focused on my family and my study and my own life. And I was very interested in investment banking and the stock markets and finance. And so studied at school and got into an economics degree at Sydney Uni, did my master's in commerce, got into a graduate program at the Commonwealth Bank and worked in their investments division and had a wonderful time. And I was there for about 9 years and life was great, kicking goals, doing well. And it's actually really extraordinary. So I was working in investment products and I was project managing as well. And it's incredible how, like, looking back on my life, the key sort of turning points and how I realized I was so unconsciously conscious in those moments, and I was being groomed by some sort of higher force that was guiding me along my path, but always corralling me towards where I am right now. Like, as I look back on my life, everything now just makes absolute sense. And I hope it does to the end of my days, because there's a huge element of trust now that I've come to understand and embody. Um, and so all of the skills that I was picking up, blah, 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 one day, I'll never forget it. It was Thursday night shopping, and I was leaving the office, and my office was in Martin Place, and I was in my early 20s, and I was meeting a friend of mine for a drink, and I was just cutting through Pitt Street Mall, and Animal Liberation New South Wales had a stall, and they had these massive pictures of, like, the battery hen and the sow in the stall and skinned foxes in a fur farm, etc. Animal testing photos, really big photos in this store. And I saw this and I stopped, and it was like in the movies, like everything just kind of went black and white and I started to feel dizzy. And I asked them, I said, who are you? And, like, what am I looking at? And remember, this is just when modems and dial-up internet was starting, right? And they're like, oh, do you know about factory farming? Do you know about this? I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, do you know where your eggs come from? I'm like, no, And so they started, and the more they spoke, the sicker I felt. And I felt like I was being pushed into the ground and everything was spinning. I actually didn't make it to the other end of the mall. I actually went home. I rang my friend and I said, I'm not feeling really well. I need to go home. She's like, that's fine. I went home and I grabbed the dogs and the cat and I sat on my bed and I was like, with the dial up modem, right? And I got on my big clunky laptop, loaded in half an hour. I got on, connected to the internet. And I started Googling and I got on the Animal Lib website and I was like, oh my God, where have I been? I was really angry. Like, I was just angry and I was like heartbroken. And I was like, how did I not know this? So basically the next morning I was vegetarian, but just didn't know what to do with this. And when I had been speaking to the amazing crew at Animal Lib, they were telling me that they have an office and they have these monthly meetings. So I went to their first meeting and they were talking about their campaigns. And that's actually where I first met the late Dr. Siobhan O'Sullivan. And she took my breath away. She swarmed into this room. She was living in the Blue Mountains at that point. She had her big curly hair and her power colors. And I'm like, who is this ethereal being? And she was talking about the elephant campaign that she was running at the time. I was blown away. So I started getting involved with Animal Lib and just helping them with whatever skills I had in terms of project management, all that sort of stuff. But I started to do things like, I'd go to these like investment meetings at the bank, and then in my lunch break, I'd go up to the Animal Lib office and get the big pig outfit, and then I'd put it on, and then I'd run up and down Martin Place in this massive pig costume, leafleting about, factory farms pork. And then I would go to the office and resume my meetings. And as it started to sort of, I was always doing well at my job, but my order of, I guess, priorities really started to shift and go on the basically turned on their head. And then Voiceless I started to go to like more events, and this started to sort of unfold over the course of about 1.5 years. And Voiceless had this extraordinary event. They had Voiceless Law Talk, and then they started to bring these incredible speakers out from overseas. And so, through the network, I found out about this conference, and I'm sitting in one of the Voiceless, and I think this may have been pre your entrance, because Katrina Sharman was there at that time. And
Yeah.
they brought in this incredible lawyer from, I think it was the Animal Legal Defense Fund or some litigation firm in the US. I think it was the ALDF. And they were talking about how they sued the US government for testing explosives on dolphins. And I'm like, this is the thing. And they're like, yeah, we've got this new animal law kind of revolution happening in the US. And, there's ways you can use the law to help animals. And again, mind blown. So I went home and I I thought, oh, I don't want to like muck around at university for like 4 more years and get a law degree. Like, how do I do this? So I started researching, and I found the Juris Doctor in Law at Melbourne University. And I was attracted to Melbourne University because I love Melbourne, and it became like a vegan mecca for food. But also Peter Singer was a laureate professor at Melbourne and was lecturing like three months in the year. Other times of the year, I think he was at Princeton. So I thought 2 years, I can handle 2 years. I can do this intensively, trimesters, no breaks. So I applied thinking nothing more of it. So I got called and I was interviewed. There was like a sort of interview process you had to sort of go through. And I got in. And unexpected. And then I was due to start the degree within a few months. So I literally just had to pack up my stuff, quit my job. I had no savings, break the news to my family. My father thought I lost my mind. And then I drove to Melbourne and started my law degree. So it was really tough. And it was really tough because financially I had to get a job where I was working 30 hours a week and trying to keep up the intensive course. But I was also still so hungry to get involved with animal law that I was just farming myself out to any animal group that needed legal research or whatever. And that's when I met the Graham McEwen, who was starting the Barristers Animal Welfare Panel, and he was just sort of putting together a secretariat. So I joined forces with Graham, and we expanded the panel. It became a national panel. So this is sort of what started to happen. And then I finished law school. And there was quite a revolution happening with the animal law. It was really starting to take shape. It was a really exciting time. And then I sort of had to give myself a stern talking to. I was like, you can't specialize in animal law per se. It's not a like recognized legal profession, but you need to learn the tricks of the game. So I got into commercial law, and I worked in commercial law for a few years because I wanted that whole breadth of experience, like litigation, admin law, constitutional law, anything and everything that might be able, property law, to help animals, criminal law. So I did that for a few years. And then I worked as a judge's associate for a little while because I thought I was going to go to the bar and be a barrister. And that was how I would be, that would be my service to animals. But then at the cusp of that, I'd applied for the bar, paid the fee and everything, and told the law firm that's what was my intention. Then the RSPCA in South Australia contacted me and said that their lawyer was leaving and that they invited me to apply for the position. So I was flown to Adelaide and I sat for that role, and I then got the role. And then while I was in Adelaide, Animals Australia started to hear about some of the work that I was doing over there. So Animals Australia and, Lynn White and Glenys are my heroes. I've been following them for so many years. So it was a huge, like incredibly emotional honor when I got that tap. And they basically said, look, we've not had an in-house legal position. I mean, they had the wonderful Malcolm Caulfield and other lawyers that they'd been working with over the years, formidable Malcolm Caulfield, Dr. Malcolm Caulfield. But they said, look, we want you to be in-house. Here's a piece of paper. We want you to draft your position description. And I came over.
Remember this? I think when we met, you were legal counsel at RSPCA.
Yes.
And I think I have this vision. I don't know
You
if
came in after Katrina, didn't you?
correct.
Yeah.
And it's bringing back so many memories. It's like, I swear when I met you, you were legal counsel for RSPCA.
Yes, I was, because I remember your entrance was after Katrina, and that was at the time when Katrina Sharman was leaving.
Yeah. And then I remember whether I heard it directly from you or someone else. I think I heard it directly from you at some event. I don't know. It's very, like I said at the beginning, my memories are very vague of that time. But yeah, I think I remember, and I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. I thought it was so amazing. Like, that's such a great opportunity. Oh my God. You know.
Yeah. And so that's basically since January 2013, I have been with Animals Australia. And my position's been quite extraordinary, because it started out as purely legalistic, legal counsel. And also, wading through evidence and, formal legal complaints, and assisting other, organizations like RSPCA, people with prosecutorial powers and investigation powers, like real powers, assisting them in terms of evidence gathering and formal complaints and briefs, and things like that. But then, people might not know, but Lynn White, who basically was the trailblazer for investigating the live animal export trade, from the early 2000s, even prior, I think just before even, she'd been all across the Middle East. And by the time I joined Animals Australia, she became, internationally known and renowned for her work. And it was not viable for her to keep continuing going over there, particularly because she didn't speak Arabic, and also she has blonde hair and blue eyes. So she was just she stuck out, particularly after all the media exposés, Four Corners, 7:30 report, constant. And so I speak very fluent Arabic, very fluent. And also,
do you always speak Arabic? Or
yeah,
did you?
from birth. My mother, growing up in Sydney, forced us to go to Arabic school every Saturday morning, much to my protest. It's like it was
But
like
it was
8
like,
a.m. every Saturday morning. She's like, "You will go to Arabic school." So we
it was your
had to learn
destiny.
language.
Because look where it got
I wanted to
you.
go play netball, but no, I had to go to Arabic school. So see, again, life is grooming you. Life is grooming you. Surrender. So with that skill, plus my prosecutor skills, plus my legal skills, plus knowing the culture, understanding the culture, and having that sort of, nous about me, all of those things combined. Lynn and I just had a conversation one day, and she said, how would you feel about being trained up in covert operations and undercover work? And I said, absolutely. And so the only thing that was an unknown for me was emotionally how I would be able to stand in her shoes and do what she did, because up until that point I was just in complete awe, and I still am, of everything that she's been able to do. But even without knowing the language, with a completely foreign culture to her, how she's just been able to just get in there. It's incredible.
I remember when I met her at it was the Voiceless Annual Awards night one year in Sydney. And I remember I met her, and I met Glenys as well. It was the first time that I'd met Lynn. And I was like, oh my God. Like, oh my God, it's Lynn White. Oh my God. Like us, who've worked in the animal advocacy sector, it's like God. It's like you can't believe it. And I have this photo with me, Lynn, and Glenys. It's on my website, on my about page, because that moment in my life for me was just like, oh, this is
Very
amazing.
special.
I've arrived.
Yes. For me, it was like meeting Madonna.
Totally.
Yeah.
Amazing woman. And she's still she hasn't retired. She's still going at it.
She's a force. She's a force. Yeah. The best way I can describe her is she is a force. Yes. Yes.
So the emotional part of it can totally relate to how, well, I can't because I haven't been there, I haven't done it. But I can totally understand or appreciate how emotionally challenging it would be. And I don't know, I'm sure some of my listeners would have seen footage from live export exposés that are usually a result of Animals Australia investigations, are usually a result of Shatha Hamade investigations,
Yeah.
right? Because you are the lead investigator when it comes to live animal export, right? In that region. So, the footage can be really challenging to watch, but that's on a TV or a computer. And not that I watch much of that stuff these days because I don't I don't need to. I know what's
Right.
happening, right? But for people who aren't aware, the first time that you see that footage, it can be and not even the first time. Like I still struggle watching it. Um, but that's on a TV. Like there's distance there, and I can't even imagine how it would be emotionally. Like I'd be a crying, blubbering mess, right? And I'd be like, I like, but obviously that's not going to help the animals, right? And so you're always going to have that at your back of your mind. What's your purpose? What are you there for? So I guess I'd love to hear how you manage that emotional side of it. Have you built up like this kind of like hardcore strength or this massive wall around your heart that allows you to compartmentalize when you're there in those countries, in those environments, so that you can actually get in there and do your job effectively? Like, how do you manage it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And you'd be surprised to know that this work has actually softened me. It's
Mm.
actually quite extraordinary. This work has softened my walls, it's softened my heart, it's actually woken me up. And coming back to life grooming you and being, the best way I could describe how I was unconsciously conscious, meaning that I was awake but didn't realize how strong and awake I was. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know how to ask the right questions. I wasn't open enough to be in a position to even have the desire to ask the right questions around what all of this means and why. But what I do know is that, I've been doing these investigations since 2014. It's been a long time. Maybe actually 2013 I started. Um, in the beginning, what was the rod in my back was, of course, the support of Lynn and Glennis. Incredibly supportive. I still do. I have everything I need and more to be able to do the job that I do, from a physical sense, a spiritual sense, an emotional sense, like everything. I have full support. Also, the team at Animals Australia, you know, everyone, there's such mastery that goes across the organization, from the comms team, the investigation team, my legal team, our supported services team, the whole thing, the management team, the executive, all of it. There's such mastery across the whole chain, but there's also a living the values and a support network there. And so, you're right. Like when you watch it behind a screen, even that is difficult. But you know what, Ruth? I actually find watching footage that I haven't gathered, that someone else has gathered, when I watch that, I find it really difficult because I feel a sense of disempowerment and help. I don't know what happened to those animals. I don't know how they are. I have no control or ability to do something. And so when you're out in the field, it's really difficult. Like I won't lie, like the physical toll it takes on your body, because you literally are coming off 26-hour flights. You don't rest. You get to the hotel, you gear up, you put your covert on, you get changed. Your driver's waiting for you. You got to get the fixer ready. You got to download the maps. You got to gather the intel, and you're out. And the days are like 16-hour days out in the field. You come back, you shower, you have something basic to eat, you try and sleep for a few hours, but you got to get up. It's slaughterhouse hours in across these regions. They start slaughtering at like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Then you've got the livestock markets. Then you've got all the other illegal nooks and crannies that you need to go and investigate and follow intel for. So you're just constant. So the physical toll on your body is really quite extraordinary. The other thing is the heat. I'm not always there during the Festival of Sacrifice. I go multiple times a year. So it's not just during the peak of the heat, which is like Kuwait clocks over 50 degrees Celsius in the summer. When I'm there, it can hit over 50 degrees Celsius. And I find it's very difficult because my battery packs, my cameras, my wires, they all overheat. My phones, I have to take like 3 phones with me because they malfunction from the heat. It's that bad. I have to wear ice vests under my covert gear. Like it's a whole operation. Like it's a logistical, like, so the discomfort and the fatigue is one thing, but you're out there, the smells, the sounds, trying to chase intel, trying to follow things up, making sure your cameras are working, you've got the right angles, you're getting the right evidence. It's a real kind of, you're always on. So that can be really difficult, like really challenging. But what I will say is I have never ever stood in the field and felt weak or scared or broken. There's always been a higher force at my back that has supported me and kept me strong and allowed me to bear witness and just do what I need to do. And I've never understood what that was in my unconscious conscious state, right? But I've always been grateful for it. And it's all of those things. It's the support. It's believing in what I'm doing and knowing the power of what I'm going to do when I take it back to my team in Australia and what they're going to do with it next and what we're going to do now to honor the suffering and to honor the teaching of these animals for the greater good, so all of those factors combined are what gets me through all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And can we talk, you mentioned I mean, that's the other thing I didn't even think about, that all the gear that you've got to put on, because these are, Animals Australia is not some, I can't even think of the words. It's not some itty bitty organization that doesn't know what it's doing. It's very sophisticated. And so these investigations, you're wearing sophisticated gear.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you're the FBI for the animals, right?
We are. We really are. We really are. Yeah.
Which it's like what you said around when you're watching on the TV someone else's investigation, how disempowering that is. And I was going to say that, yeah, when you're the one who's out in the field in your get up, you've got the higher force, you got your team back home, they've got your back, how empowered you would feel, because you are getting to shine a light on the truth, on what is happening, on what the industry is complete opposite to what the industry is saying about, oh, it's humane, we all look after our animals, like BS, right? But you mentioned around the higher force, and you knew we were going to go here. For my listeners, Shatha and I had a bit of a chat beforehand, and I'm pretty sure every conversation that I have on here, there's going to be a little spiritual bent to it, because that is part and parcel of who I am, and it's my show, and so, but
it's my party.
it's
Yeah.
my party, come along, one, bring your party hat, right? If you don't like it, it's okay, it's all right. Tune in next week, totally different show, right? But obviously you say higher force and my ears are like, oh, and I get my pen and I write down higher force, got your back. So I'd love for you to talk a bit to that around how the higher force shows up to you and for you, what that looks like for you, what that feels like for you. Because some of our listeners might have this feeling, but they don't know what it is. And they're going to listen to you and go, shit, I have that too,
Yeah. 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 Again, another really good question.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, this conversation is so delicious and so rich that we could speak about this for hours. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of try and headline the key points around it, because it's a very deep, rich conversation to have. But I think at the most relatable level, what I will say is that, there's something that beats our hearts. There's something that breathes us. There's something that gets us out of bed in the morning, even if we don't, even if we don't know why we're here and what this is all about. Something beats our heart. And there's something that draws us to be good people and kind people. There's something that makes compassion and kindness open our hearts and inspire us. There's something about when a stranger in the street smiles at you, your whole heart just opens up when you smile back, and you don't forget that smile. There's a reason why, there's a beautiful line I need to do justice to her. People don't remember what you said and what you did. They remember how you made them feel. And that is so true, right? And so that all speaks to energy. That's what that speaks to. And that speaks to connection. So what I know to be true is that we are all energetic beings. Now, you can call it the soul, you can call it the oversoul, you can call it your higher self, you can call it whatever you like. But I'm talking about your absolute essence that you carry as your consciousness. You have a human costume, and you've come into this earthly experience to have this life. Why am I here? Well, you're here to elevate your consciousness. You're here to expand your life, to have fun, to feel joy, to be inspired. That's why you're here. And that is at personal level in terms of the richness of your life and the fullness of your life, but it's also about the collective level, the collective consciousness, the high vibration. You know, when someone walks into the room and you're like, I like the energy of that person. And then someone could walk into the room and you're like, oh, I feel like the oxygen just came out of the room, or there's a heaviness. Well, that's all about the energy that people carry, and the frequency in which they operate. And so I guess my exploration started with that. Like, what is this? And why am I drawn to the animals? And why is it that kindness and compassion elevates us and expands us and inspires us? And even, neurologically, you could look at all these fascinating studies about what happens to your brain, which parts of your brain light up when you're in fight or flight versus when you are in, your essence of kindness and compassion and inspiration, and what comes in from that. So the next step for that was okay, I'm on the right path there because I'm doing all the good feeling things. I've moved my career and my service into something that is a good feeling place for me. So what are the animals? Who are they? Like, why do I feel so drawn to them? And what I've sort of come to know over the years, particularly in the last maybe 5 years, I very deeply believe and this comes back to your question, what holds you and supports you in the field? I don't, and even not just the field, everything we do locally with, factory farming, the horrible pig gassing that's going on, animal testing, all of it. I do not consider animals to be victims. I I would not, and I do not take their power away from them. Once upon a time, I did see them as victims, particularly when I was prosecuting for the RSPCA. I don't understand them in that way anymore. I view them as teachers, and I work for them and with them for the greater purpose. And what's that? It's to teach humanity and to teach us all that we're actually all connected. I am the animals, they are me, I'm you, you're me. We're all one energetic source, right? We've all come from a divine source energy, right? But we're all here in these, different costumes in this illusion of separation. But we know it's oneness, right? We know we're connected to the animals. We know we're connected to the earth. We know that the great mother created us, right? Gaia, our beautiful Gaia. Like, we know this, right? In our absolute truth, we know this. And so for me, it was about, okay, if that's the case, why are they here? Well, they're here for their own purposes. A sheep is here to be a sheep, to just be a sheep, right? How extraordinary. And they also have a level of consciousness. They are also here for expansion and experience, right? Just because we don't speak the same language and we don't look the same does not devalue or belittle their reason for being here for their own reasons, right? But we are all connected. And so I guess the higher purpose and the truth for me is this: they are our teachers. I'm working with them on their portfolio. What's that? It's to teach all creation, all humans, kindness and compassion. Why? To elevate us. Why? So that we can live happier and healthier and richer lives in the way that we treat ourselves and each other. It also, this veil of duality, this separation that we have from each other because we look the same and talk the same and dress the same, bullshit. We're all the same, right? We're one source. So that's the power and cheekiness of animals, and that's why I love working with them. And so when I'm out on the field and I'm seeing pretty egregious suffering and egregious harm, I don't stand there and look at the person committing the act and think, you bastard. There's no anger. There's none of that. It's bearing witness, and it's literally just not judging what's right and wrong or good and bad. There's light and there's dark. Absolutely there is. But this isn't, I'm not there to be the judge. What I am there is to do is to use the skills that I have to stop the suffering, alleviate the suffering, but to elevate and elevate and elevate. So, nobody, so let me be clear on this. And this is an absolute truth that I would attest to, I do attest to. Nobody in their right mind harms animals or wants to harm animals. And what I mean by that does not mean that people who use animals or whatever are crazy, whatever that means. What I mean is that our treatment of animals is informed by our inherent thinking, our culture, our education, our community, our family, what we've been taught by, those before us. Eating meat. I'm not here to even say you should or you shouldn't eat meat. That's not my business. That's not my journey. What you eat, what you wear, your view on the world, your view on animals and their use and how you play part in that. All of that is an inherited belief or an inherited, ethos. And so I grew up eating meat. very traditional Lebanese family. I never questioned where my food came from, but I reached a point in my life where it just did not energetically accord with me anymore. I just knew I could lead a healthy and happy life without eating animals, and energetically, my body just didn't want to consume animals at all, or byproducts of animals. It just stopped. It just stopped. And people ask me, I'm like, don't you miss cheese and don't you miss this? I'm like, I actually don't. I just energetically don't accord anymore. And it doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. It's just that's where I'm at energetically. Um, and so being out there on the field, watching these young men in these slaughterhouses, watching what's happening in the wet markets, watching what's happening with the dog meat trade in Bali, which we've now almost, well, we have actually shut that down. There's all these things that we've been working on, but I look at it from why is this person behaving the way that they're behaving? It's all inherited. These boys in these slaughterhouses, and it is torture what is happening to the animals, but they're not standing there in this gratuitous way going, yes, suffer. It's, I'm here to kill this animal. It's beast versus man. I have basic infrastructure, little training. I've got to feed my family. I need to get the meat off the body of this animal, right? And to do that, this is what I need to do. And then you look at the behavior of children, who are very clearly falling into step with their, fathers, their mothers, their uncles, their grandfathers, and we had the same issue here with the greyhound racing investigations when we investigated all the live baiting that was happening. You should see the generations that were standing at these tracks while they were live baiting with piglets and possums and rabbits. There were children and grandchildren standing there watching while their fathers and grandfathers were tying these live animals to the lures, completely desensitized. What's going to happen to those children? They believe that this is right. This is how you train your dog to win a race. So this is what I mean. There's no judgment here. There's no right or wrong. There is inherited thinking. And so coming back to my comment, you are not in your right mind when you are harming animals because you are basing it on a belief or something that has deviated you from your truth, which is, I don't want to harm any being that has the capacity to suffer if I can help it. That's your essence. That's your truth.
Yeah, I love everything. Like, you speak in my language, sister, like seriously. But I love how your approach to, you're coming into this really what would be a challenging situation for anybody from any walk of life, right? And you're coming at it from heart, right? And so you're having that, oh, you're frozen. Oh, there you are.
You're back. You're back. Yeah.
I'm back too. Okay, good. We both froze.
Okay.
You're approaching this whole situation from your heart, and you're coming at it with compassion, and you're also coming at it with, this is my role. This is the role that I've chosen in this life. And it's not about shaming or judging, because that energy is not going to help the animals. The energy that's going to help the animals is the energy, or that's going to help, any animal, human or non-human, is the energy of love. It's like I often say, to myself and to my clients, like, what would love have me do? And love wouldn't have you judging and hating on someone. And it's also seeing the players in the show, right? Like and it's this honoring of the animals' souls, of who they are and their choice to come into this world to play a part, just like the part you're playing, the part I'm playing, part my cat Max is playing. Have a little snooze on the chair, yes. Right? The people that are, doing these actions, practicing these actions towards animals. There's a whole, and yeah, this could be a whole topic, a whole show could be around the spirituality behind, these factors and these circumstances, because it's massive. And I think in the animal advocacy sphere, it is often forgotten that, the whole topic of like soul contracts and soul agreements, and that we've agreed to these things taking place. And what does that mean? And how do we approach these things from our hearts?
Yeah.
So I think that's a huge thing. It sounds like that's a huge thing that's definitely over, the past 10 years has been able to support you to get up, get on a plane, get on your gear and go to these places and take this footage and do your job as effectively as you're doing it. because you're not looking at these people going, oh my God, I want to harm you like you're harming the animal.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll give you an example, Ruth. And this is, I'll never forget this day. I was in Morocco years ago, and my driver, it wasn't a particularly friendly, it was a bit hostile. And I said to my driver, look, I don't feel right about you being here. I'd like you to drop me off at the front. I'm going to go in alone. And so I just thought it was unsafe. So I just thought, you go, I'm going to go in. And so he dropped me off at the top of this slaughterhouse. And so I not only gather evidence for Australian live exported animals, I work for our colleague groups all over the world. So, Europe live exports, Romania is one of the largest live export countries in the world of sheep. South America, heaps of cattle into the Middle East and North Africa, heaps, and they suffer. And so I document all animals, even local animals, which I give that footage to local groups to see if they can do something in terms of awareness and education. And a lot of people probably don't realize, but we have changed so many laws in so many countries around the world just from our undercover live export investigations. We have changed enormous amounts of laws in terms of animal handling and animal welfare around the world from our footage. And it's also informed court cases and things like that. It's been wonderful. But I was in Morocco or Tunisia. I actually can't remember. I think it may have been Tunisia. Anyway, so because that was the trip when I did them back to, but it was both of them in the same sort of week. My driver was at the front. So I walk into this slaughterhouse, and I knew that there had been South American bulls in this slaughterhouse, and I knew that they had no infrastructure, and it was just going to be horrible. And they were young men. And I walked in, and it was a horror show. It was an absolute horror show inside. So I documented what I needed to do. And I walked out, and this little puppy came bounding towards me, and he had the shiniest, loveliest coat and the best body condition. And he's bounding towards you, his ears are flopping, and he was a street dog because they have a street dog problem there. And I followed him, and I said to him, "Where's your mum?" So I'm looking around for the mum puppy, mum dog. Couldn't find her, but he led me to this massive Otto bin outside the slaughterhouse, which had all the horrible off and everything in it. And I looked underneath because he went under the bin. Went under the bin, and there was a dog bed, and there were two bowls, one with clean water and one with puppy biscuits and snacks. And I was just thinking, and I just had this moment where I just thought, the same boys and young men and men that were in that slaughterhouse, literally stabbing animals in the eyes and slashing their tendons and breaking their tails to get them down. These are the same men and boys that were looking after this puppy. And that is probably one of the most powerful demonstrations of inherited thinking I can give you. And so how can you do anything but feel compassion for that scenario? I can't feel angry at those boys and those men. I can't. This is an inherited thing where, those animals, those beasts are there to be killed and eaten. They don't have the same feelings as this little cute puppy. The puppy belongs here and they belong there. And I'm like, this is how it is. And these are the things that we need to unravel.
Yeah, and this happens in all sectors of life where there's an involvement with animals. And you've spoken about your veganism, and I mentioned it in the intro to you about and all the amazing vegan foods are in Melbourne. Like, oh my gosh! But it's like this ability or this programming that's occurred that allows people to compartmentalize and have this differentiation between a dog and a cow, or a dog and a sheep, or a cat and a pig. And it's like that old saying is like, would you do this? Would you treat your dog this way? That the animal advocacy movement has been using for a really, really, really long time to try and get that. There is no difference emotionally between a dog, a cow, a sheep, a pig, right?
Yeah.
We're all sentient beings. Just because an animal has been identified as a food animal doesn't mean they're robots, that they've had their emotions stripped away from them. Like I remember when I was growing up and my mum was like, they're just, that they're there to be eaten. And it's like, they haven't had their emotions bred out of them. Like, it doesn't matter. They still feel, right? So yeah, it's this human thing, this programming that's happened. And yeah, it's like, well, how can you from your heart judge people for the society that's programmed us in this way?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's just, yeah, it's, and one of the other things that, we're not here to save the world, and that's a real, like, like when that finally dawned on me a few years ago, I was just really relieved because I was like, shit, to do all this. But I fixed it. But that's not the case at all. If you wake up in the morning and like it might sound like a stigma, you're like, yeah, 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 but it is the God honest truth. If you can just lead a healthy and happy life, live from your truth, keep your heart open as much as possible. I mean, don't get me wrong, some days I'm a mole. I'm such an emotional mole. It's just we're human. That's the celebration of the human. We have emotions for a reason and a continuum of emotions for a reason because they are our launch pads to evolve. You need the contrast. You need to know what feeling like shit feels versus feeling good, or feeling sad versus feeling happy. You need to know what's a good feeling place and what's not a good feeling place for you. That's how you discern in your life. That's how you elevate in your life. That's how you make decisions for your highest good in your life. And there's the path, right?
Exactly.
But then, we're not here to save the world. Nobody is. You're here to be you, seek the truth, live your truth, which would amount to a happy life, and basically not intend to lead by example, but you just naturally lead by example because you become this energetic being that is operating at a level of frequency that people want to be around. You
And I
know,
wouldn't be
there's a lightness.
surprised. Yeah, and it's like, and then you're attracting those people to you because
Yeah,
you're vibrating at that frequency.
yeah,
But I wouldn't be surprised if, when you're over there doing these investigations, because you're coming at it from this place of love and compassion, that it probably allows you to be so much more effective in your job
yeah,
because those people on the other side of it are not feeling that hatred and that
absolutely,
judgment. It probably actually
absolutely.
hits you in more places than if you were coming at it from hatred and judgment.
Absolutely. And of all so I've been everywhere across the Middle East and North Africa, except Libya. But I've pretty much been everywhere. And the place that I find the most challenging is Egypt. I find it incredibly so when I really have to dig deep in terms of my connecting with my soul, connecting with truth, and just connecting with the highest perspective. Every step I take in Egypt, there's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of suffering, not just the animals, the people, the whole energy of it. It's really difficult. And it doesn't help that my favorite, I shouldn't have, but I have a favorite animal, and it's donkeys. I just love them so much. I can't even tell you. I just love them so much. Like I just think of them and it's like someone sprinkling sugar on my heart. Like I just feel it. I just love them. But they are
I'm like
one
that
of
with
the most, yeah.
cows and cats.
Well, they are the most abused animals in Egypt, the working donkeys and whatever. And you just see them in the most horrendous situations. So what I do in Egypt is as soon as I land, we get going and do what we need to do. But I always in the car have big tubs that we buy, big drums of water and lots of fruits and vegetables. Because as we're driving on these long, dusty roads, a lot of it is desert. We're in Cairo proper, but we also go out to a lot of the desert areas as well. Um, there's always a donkey tied to a pole in the blistering heats with the flies and everything else. So my drivers constantly know they have to pull over because I want to get out and put some water for the donkey, feed the donkey. And some of them are so tethered to walls that they can't, their heads down. So I hand feed them apples and carrots. And it's just wow. But I'll never forget, we were in this village one day, and obviously because I can understand different dialects, we're in the village and there was a donkey that was tied up next to this horrible just bin. It was just a bin overflowing with rubbish in the middle of this kind of street, and there was no shade. And I'm very respectful. I mean, they're property, they're someone's property, so I don't interfere. What I do is I just try and keep them comfortable, or give them water. And so I asked the driver to pull over, and then I got the big barrel of water, and I got some fruits and whatever. And I went up to the donkey, and then I noticed that the children from the street were all starting to sort of like nudge each other going, look what's happening over here. And they were just blown away, like, who is this woman and what the hell is she doing, right? And then I heard one of the little girls say to the kids behind her, look at, in Arabic, she said, look at the crazy lady. Look at the crazy lady feeding apples to the donkey, right? And I was just giggling. And so I thought I'm just going to run with this. And so the donkey was so happy. And so I started to pat his head and give him a bit of a snuggle. And the kids were giggling. They just thought I had lost my mind, right? Because to the children, he was a working donkey. He was like a car, like he was just an inanimate object. Anyway, I turned around and I looked at the little girl and I said to her in Arabic, would you like to feed the donkey? And and so she started to sort of slowly edge towards me. And I started to talk to her in Arabic. So really kind of, and so I gave her the apple and she was scared of the donkey. So we got closer and closer. Ruth, within about 4.5 minutes, I had a lineup of about 10 children from the village waiting for their turn to feed and pat the donkey.
I love that so much. It's like you're planting seeds all
See
over
the
the
power of
world.
that? Like
Yeah.
that is what I mean. It's like you do whatever you want to do in your life. And it doesn't have to be animals, you
Mm.
know? Like I a lot of my friends, I'm drawn to musicians. I don't play music, I don't sing, but I love music. And I am awed by anybody that can sing and that can play any instrument because for me, that is the most heart-opening thing. And so, I levitate around people like that a lot. I have so many friends who are musicians because that opens my heart and I'm in such awe of them. And I say to them, every time you play a concert or a gig or wherever you are, the collective consciousness and the evolutionary, like, progression of the people around you and therefore the greater grid just elevates. And I'm like, thank you for your, because they're like, what you do is amazing. I'm like, no, yes, it is. But
Mm.
what we're all doing is amazing. Like musicians to me, heart openers and elevators in terms of frequency. Do you know what I mean? And for me, that's service as well. So
Yeah.
anywhere where you are in your mastery, where you love what you're doing, whatever it is, you are elevating, you are expanding. And by virtue of that, so is everyone else. Just because you
Exactly.
can't see it. But
Mm.
if you really close your eyes and feel into it, you can feel it. Like it's true.
Yeah,
That's the
music
truth.
is it is the
Yeah.
truth, and music is so powerful. I'm the same as I don't have musician friends. But yeah, music is just it gets right into the depths of my soul and certain music. I'm not like death metal and stuff like that, but that doesn't get me into a very nice place. That gets me angry. So I don't like that kind of music. But it's like that music that just, it can change your energy in an instant, and that's
That's it. There it is. That's the money shot. That's the money shot, isn't it? Yeah.
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 So one of the questions I had for you, which you've even like answered with your donkey tail. I was going to say donkey story, but donkey tail works much better. The connections that you've had with animals in your work. So, you know, any times where, I mean, I can imagine there must be so many times, like, looking into an animal's eyes. And I'd love you to share some of those beautiful, like, powerful connections you've had. And
Yeah.
they won't necessarily be joyful connections, I guess, but I imagine the feeling in your soul, even if it was even if it was around like a sad circumstance, probably just having that pure source connection in itself would just be amazing. So I'd love for you to speak about that.
Yeah. So I think, I have to say, particularly in the last, 4 or 5 years, I really made sure that I connected with every single animal that I was in the company of. So I'd go into these chaotic street markets. I'd go into the backs of these, seventh circle of hell places. And whether they were camels or horses or goats or sheep or cows or lambs or whatever they were, whoever they were, I'd look into their eyes. I'd look into their eyes. And I just, it's not so much the words that were coming out of me, it's more the love and the gratitude. And that in that I'm here to bear witness and I'm here with you. And thank you. Like, thank you for your suffering and your sacrifice for teaching us, for our benefit, like for our evolution. It's just the ultimate sacrifice. So I connect with all of them when I'm in their company. it's just something that I feel compelled to do because it helps me and I feel it helps them. You know, I've been in some horrible situations, particularly in Kuwait, where during the festival of sacrifice, it's literally just chaos. It's just slaughter and blood, and it's awful. It's just violence. And you know, there's been moments where I've noticed that if I walk into a very crowded slaughterhouse where they're just slaughtering, you know, and carrying on, some of the animals just sort of come towards me. It's almost like they feel me and they just sort of push into me. And it's really hard because all I want to do is just take them in my arms. But I know that just by them pushing against me or just coming to stand next to me, they feel me. They know. Like it's just, and I guess I want to give them the hand or the hand of kindness or the love of kindness before they close their eyes. Like I want to send them off with love, which is also why I check myself a lot around them when I'm seeing them out their exit clause. You know, I check myself and I make sure that I just hold the room. I hold the room with love. I hold the space. That's the ultimate connection with every being that I come across in all of my travels. Um, Back to Egypt, there was a circumstance in Egypt where a couple of the bulls got loose from this very decrepit kind of basic slaughterhouse up in the village, just on the side of Cairo, on the back skirts or outskirts of Cairo, and they both escaped, and they literally ran down into a football field across the road, an oval. It was actually just an oval, and all of the young men at the slaughterhouse, there was probably about 25 or 30 of them, took chase, and it became a bit of a game, and they kept catching them, you know, stabbing them with knives to try and weaken them a bit more. Then the bulls would keep running. Then they would grab them again, catch them. And they're powerful, powerful beings, these bulls. They're from Colombia. And stabbing them wherever they can, heads, eyes, whatever, tendons to get them down. Eventually they got them down, but they got them down in a way that I can't even tell you. And the way that they were able to drag them back up the hill into the slaughterhouse was just brutal. So I captured all of that on my body cameras. And that actually went back to one of the biggest groups in South America and formed the basis of a very powerful campaign that they used. But that was actually probably one of the most difficult days I've had in the field. And that was earlier on. So the day finished, it was dusk and it was summer and it was probably 48 degrees Celsius, very dry heat. And I was taken back to my hotel in the middle of Cairo, and it was just a basic hotel, very tall hotel. It's just dusty. There's just nothing green. It's all just cement and dust. And I just felt like I needed to be outside. And I was really kind of frazzled by what had just happened at this slaughterhouse. And I put all my cameras away, whatever, I had a shower. And I just thought, I just need to get out of this room. And so I took the elevator up to the top of the building. And there were chairs up on the building, and it was just cement and dust. And so I sat on the top of this building on this, like, it was like a deck chair. And there were a few people pottering around, like some of the workers and whatever. Nothing green. And all of a sudden, like I was sitting up on this deck chair and I had like my knees up against my chest, like this. And I was really upset. And out of nowhere, Ruth, out of nowhere, and I'm on like, I don't know, the 20th floor. A butterfly appears, Ruth. She came around. I'm going to say she was beautiful. And she came around and she just started fluttering. And I just looked up and I said, hello. And I was like, where's the garden? Like, where are the trees? Like, what is this? And I'm like, where did you come from? And she landed on my knee and she just kind of fluttered on my knee for a little bit. And then she fluttered off and I said, come back, come back. So she came back and she just kind of circled me a little bit. She landed on my elbow and then she just fluttered off. And I just, like, she took my breath away. And I was just like, what is this? But something happened to me in that moment with her visit that I'm like, I'm all right. I can do this. I can do this. Yeah.
Like she was just letting you know. I mean, butterflies, right? The most common symbol that most people know for butterflies is transformation. But it's just having that. It was like a little, she was like a little angel messenger.
Angel saying, we got you. Keep going. You got this. Keep going.
Sharing beauty with you in that stark town that you were in.
Yeah. It was exquisite.
There's beauty.
Absolutely exquisite. Yeah.
I love that story. And the love, I think, it's not surprising that, when you're in those slaughterhouses, that the animals are gravitating. You'll have some animals gravitate towards you because they'll be able to feel your love.
Yeah,
And that's some of the, and it really is important. It's like, yeah, checking your energy. And with our animals at home and with the animals in the wild,
yeah,
they do pick up on our energy so strongly.
absolutely.
Coming at it, if you're in those situations and you're fearful and you're angry, it's like you say,
Yeah,
it's, you want them to have that moment of love as they exit out of this world.
absolutely.
It's
And
going
it
to
just,
support them in their journey.
honestly, Ruth, like I have one of those rare privileges where like I get to see miracles happening all the time in the way in where I work and where I go. Like for all of the heartbreak and all of the sadness and all of the suffering that you see, um, the miracles and the beauty of things that happen as a result of that contrast. And this is what this is. It's contrast. It's light and dark. And you need the contrast to be able to have the elevation. And so for all of the suffering and violence that I witnessed and documented that day, the transformation or that transmutation of that came through that butterfly experience, and all the other, that beautiful donkey, the children, like it is all, and it is, you're right, it's holding space energetically. And we're probably going to finish up soon, but there's just something I want to say, because I think, today's the 20th of October 2023, so for the record, of where we are at this time in human history, it would be remiss of me, having spoken about all of that, to not broaden the scope out to just, I mean, animals are our teachers. They teaching us our humanity, our consciousness, and our love. I need to talk about Gaza and Israel. I have been to those regions many times with our work. Animals Australia has funded the biggest animal rescue shelter in Gaza. And we are in daily updates with the beautiful people that we've been partnering with over this shelter. I've personally been into Palestine, numerous times, because we're also working on animal projects with the beautiful people of Palestine as well as Israel. We have beautiful colleagues across Israel. And this isn't about speaking about what's happening with our connection with the animal communities there. I think this comes back to a time when a lot of people are feeling helpless and broken and sad with what is happening over there. And I have to admit to you, when it broke out, early last week, I was crippled. I was crippled. So for all of my, you know, higher perspective knowing and all the truths and everything that I know to be true about this life and who we are and why we're here and how we are all connected, um, it crippled me. I couldn't work. I couldn't breathe. But what I was compelled to do, and I felt really helpless, what I felt compelled to do is, I know I live in an apartment, but there's a beautiful park across the road. I just needed to just go to the park and earth and take my shoes off and put my feet in the earth and just like feel love in my heart and push love into wherever it was going to go. And it's just something I just wanted to, it would be remiss of me to not mention that as an extension or as part of this conversation, because at the end of the day, we're all connected. We are all sentient beings, and we have to hold space for each other, particularly when we have the conflict that is, ensuing in the Middle East and all around the world. There's conflict in many parts of the world. If we are in a privileged position to be in a place of peace and we are able to do this, I think it's on all of us now to be in our hearts and to push love, push love, push light, whatever you can through your body and your heart. That is what is being called for us all to do at this time. Hold the space with light. We need to push out the dark, right? So that the light is going to have to prevail. It will prevail, but we've all got to be a part of this. Like, we are all in this together. And this isn't about, there's no judgment or criticism. There's no who's right and who's wrong. This is about lighting up the grid, the cosmic grid, with as much love as we can push into it at this time, more than ever, because it's for all of us. It's for the animals. It's for our children. It's for each other. It's for the planet.
Yeah, I mean,
And I think it's really important to discuss that.
yeah, totally. And it is around that. I mean, it's anything, and it's anything and everything that goes on across the entire world, across the entire planet. You have serious suffering and serious sadness and despair Whereas you have other situations where there's like complete and utter joy, right? And it's like you're speaking about that polarity, and there's that contrast, but without the darkness, we don't get to see and appreciate the light. We don't know what joy is unless we know what sorrow is. And so it
Absolutely.
comes back, and it's a very deep spiritual topic of conversation, and it is all around, with all the control and everything that happens in the world, it's like we have a choice. And a lot of spiritual teachers have been speaking about this. Now is the time to make your choice. Are you approaching this life from a place of fear or from a place of love? Because what we need to elevate the world is to approach things from that place of love.
Which is truth, which is home.
Exactly.
It's
So I didn't know we were
it's
going to go here today, but
I think it should go into every conversation. I think the
Mm,
more people that can hopefully see the truth in this can participate.
let's
We
infuse
just more
this,
love in the grid. Yeah, just push it in,
use
push it
this
in, push it in.
conversation with love, and it's just
Yeah.
vibrating out there. When I eventually get around to publishing it, it's just going to be sending out love vibes to
Ooh,
everybody.
ooh, ooh. Yes,
So if you're
indeed,
listening to this, big love to you and yours at this moment and
indeed,
forever.
indeed.
There's one thing before I've got a couple more questions, but I still have this back in my mind. It's something that came up in my head to ask you, my lawyer brain. When you speak about, I didn't realize that your investigative work is not just for Animals Australia, it's for other animal organizations across the globe, which I think is amazing. It's that collaborative effort, right? Which we need in the animal advocacy community, right? More than ever. If we're going to be a powerful force, we need to be collaborating. It's like with anything, right?
Absolutely.
Power in numbers. So I would love your perspective on in Australia, back in my time when I was legal counsel at Voiceless, that's when SCAS came in. I cannot remember what that means anymore. Exporter Supply Chain Assurance.
System.
It's buried
Well
in my
done.
brain there.
10 points.
So, because you spoke about all the laws that you've been able to influence, right? So, in your opinion, with all the animals from the different countries that you've seen, are Australian animals treated any better than animals from other countries? In your experience, live export, that kind of thing?
So, so there'd be different levels to that question. Australia, okay. So in terms of live exports, no. One of the biggest fallacies that has been drummed through the propaganda machine of the live animal export trade is that SCAS protects our animals. It doesn't. And I've got 10 years of a very informed expert history to counter that. So no, we can put that to bed once and for all. So no, absolutely not. In terms of how other animals are treated, so we have more laws in Australia. We have more regulations in Australia than, say, a place like the Middle East or North Africa. Europe is very highly regulated. South America is. Different. All other sort of, I guess, more the Western countries as well. It's just that they're more kind of developed in the law. But just because you have a law does not mean that you've solved the problem. I mean, we have racial anti-racism laws. We have anti-sexism laws. We have equal opportunity laws. That doesn't mean that racism and sexism and other injustices don't still occur. We have the Crimes Act. It doesn't mean that crimes still don't occur. So to sort of, just because you have laws in place and regulations in place does not inform where the community is at. And in fact, I would argue that where we are in Australia at the moment, the community has advanced well past the parliament, and we're waiting for our parliament to actually catch up to the community sentiment, right? Particularly about our treatment of animals. And the reason why there's this polarity, I believe, in terms of the moral sentiment being up here and parliament still being stuck down there is because they are very deeply conflicted, because votes and money are what drive their behaviour. And that's just the truth of it, right? And being wedded to industry and being conflicted and compromised. So that's where it's at. In terms of our treatment of animals, so that's why it's not an easy yes or no answer. In terms of our treatment of animals, we are very good in Australia at covertly abusing animals. When you drive down country roads or anywhere regional, where are the chickens and the pigs? Where are the cows? That's because most of them are locked up in cages in massive sheds in the backs of properties, right? In industrial scale farming systems. So we hide the cruelty and then we layer the products with propaganda and marketing. So, and that's the beauty of the internet, and that's the beauty of people becoming empowered and informed. Animal testing is a massive issue in this country. Most animals that are used in Australia and killed, it come from the animal testing industry. And we're talking like household products. We're not, so put medical research to one side, which in and of itself needs to be held accountable in terms of the wastage. But generally, these are the things that are happening in our backyard that people just are not aware of, or it's too confronting for them. So that's why I say it always comes back to the power of the individual. Get informed. If you don't know, find out. And if you can, make kinder choices that basically accord where you are or where you want to be energetically and ethically, and that's going to inform your life. So for me, it always comes back to the individual, not giving your power away to governments and laws and things where you're like, they got it covered. Have a look at them. No, they don't. They do not have it covered.
Yeah, and doing what aligns with your values. And it's like,
Absolutely.
when was it? 2010, no, it was when I was at Voiceless. It must have been 2011, 2012, when there was really that huge push to ban live export, and then you see the criticisms of the people of these countries, of people in those countries, like, look how they're treating animals. Oh my God. Well, yes, it is barbaric. It is horrible. It doesn't mean that we're any better, right? It's the same thing with the whole, with the whaling argument, and the dolphin slaughter in Tajid. It's like, how can the Japanese do this? And it's like, we're no different. Like you say, it's just hidden away in sheds in the back of the country.
Yeah.
We hide it.
Anything that leads you down the path of judgment and criticism is a bridge too far in terms of your own evolution. And I think it's always bring it back to yourself. What are you doing and what can you do in your life? But even if you see that that's a huge injustice, or there's an issue there that's really affecting you, what can you do about it? Can you sign a petition? Can you write to a government? Can you tell your friends about it? So whatever you feel compelled, follow your own energy. But when it goes into what I consider dark places like judgment and criticism and a divide, that for me is counterproductive. That for me makes it worse. It just layers it with more kind of, darkness and separation.
It's not that love energy we've been speaking about, right?
The elixir, the elixir.
And there is a lot, and people, we spoke earlier about how we can feel disempowered when we see something. It's like, what, we can't, I can't do anything. Shatha, she's over there and she's saving all the animals and she's shining a light. What can I do? But it's like,
take your shoes off and go to the park and push light through your beautiful body. That is what I'm going to tell you to do.
And send love to the animals, and send love to Shatha, and send love to animals, and send love to all the other people.
Put it in the grid. Put it in the grid.
All the amazing things to help the animals. Yeah. And also, I lost it. Also, this wasn't what I was going to say, but if you've got animals, go and hug your animal and shower love, and just get into that whole love vibration. And I've lost it. I totally lost what I was going to say. No, I've got it now. But sign the petitions. We often think that, I'll just sign a petition. But I still sign petitions. If I'm on Instagram and I'm like, see a koala, or I see an Animal Australia thing or Animal Live thing, I'm like, oh, yes, I'm signing that petition. Every name counts.
It's an energetic transmission, isn't it? It's actually an energetic transmission.
I don't know to this,
That's it.
And it's about living in alignment with your values, and letting the world know, or the universe know, or yourself reconfirming it to yourself that my values, I want to save the koalas from extinction. I want them to stop cutting down the trees, right? I want to save the whales. I want to save the dogs. I want to save the cows. I want to save every single animal on the planet. So what can I do? Well, you can sign a petition. You can, listen to shows like this. You can make shows like this. You can talk to people about these things, share books, read books. There's so much that we can do, even though we're not actively in the field.
Yeah,
Good.
but you are the field. You see what I
Yes,
mean?
yeah.
Like
We talk about
you're the
energy.
field.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, you're the field.
It's all
And I
about
call these things
vibration.
rockets of desire. It's like launch your rocket of desire. You know,
I love that.
when you're signing that, you're declaring to the universe that this is my rocket of desire. This is what I will have and what I will not have in my world. You know, it's not just the act of this, it's what this means. And so, you know, people, it's because we're so, you know, we think we're restricted to our senses and what we can see or feel or taste or whatever. We're not. That's not even the beginning. It's not even the start.
Mhm. That's
Do
right.
not underestimate the power of the energy that you dwell in and that you are a part of, and your part that you play in it. It is extraordinary.
Everybody matters. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, my second last question for you, Shatha. What are your hopes for the future? And where do you see things? Oh, they're two different questions. Let's just stick with the positive one. What are your hopes for the future?
My hopes for the future is that enough people, more people, 'cause it'll never be enough, more people can wake up to the connectivity between all of us. And you know, there's a beautiful mantra that I have in the mornings, and what I say is that may all creation see themselves as they truly are and see all other creation as they truly are. Because what that means is that you see yourself as an almighty, powerful being that dwells in the essence of love, and that's your power, and and that you drive your life through that. That's a good life. That's the right life. And then, but by seeing everyone else as they truly are, all creation as they truly are, what you're then saying is that I see you as a part of me. You're me and I'm you. We're all one united energetic force,
Like
right? And so for
namaste,
me, it's
right?
just a yeah. I see like it's all just I honor the divinity. It's just all encompassing. And
Mm.
so for me, that's my hope. And for me, my hope is that, you know, I can continue because, you know, we're all human after all. You know, I guess I just want to be in a place where my frequency and my elevation continues to grow because with that comes more power. And by power, I don't mean an egoic thing. I mean that I can tackle things more successfully and you know, my service can become greater and greater and greater, but also my happiness and my freedom and my well-being. So that's my hope. That's
Yeah.
my hope. Yeah.
And do you think
Yeah.
we will get, I'm sure you've been asked this question 1,000 times. Do you think we will get to the point when um, live export will finally be banned
Yes. Yes.
in
Whether or
our
not it happens
lifetimes?
well, whether or not it happens before I hit menopause is probably but my goal is before I hit menopause, it will be done. Okay. So that's
So we've
goal. But
got
yes, it
maybe
will be. It will be.
5 to 10 years.
The energy's gone out of it. It does not accord. It does not accord. It just doesn't. It has no place. It's got a few breaths left in it, but it has no place in today's world.
Yeah.
We've evolved. We have evolved. There's just a few people who are just hanging on. And you know, I'm not talking about the farmers. I'm not talking about any part of that. I'm talking about the live export companies, most of which are foreign owned. So that's who I'm talking about. The live exporters who are just yeah.
And then when that ends, you'll just go on to the next thing.
There's always something to do in this garden of earthly delights.
Yeah, and the work of Animals Australia is so vast. I mean,
Yeah,
they've really grown their reputation because of the live export debate and the work that they're doing. But it's Animals Australia's work is so much more than that. So yeah, there's plenty of work to be done, right?
absolutely. Never a dull moment.
Mm. And
Yeah.
for our listeners today, if you haven't checked out Animals Australia's website or their social media, check it out because it's very informative. That is one of the websites, like your story, that is one of the websites or the emails that I got that got me to change the way,
Oh,
what I was consuming when I was,
wow. Yeah.
so very, very important, powerful work that these organisations do. So finally, question I ask all my guests, if there was one thing you could change about the human animal relationship, what would it be?
That we could coexist in absolute harmony. and respect and love. Absolutely. And that we can see each other for who we really are. Yeah.
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 I love that.
Yeah. And
Mm.
that sheep could just be celebrated for being sheep.
Oh,
And they're just
love
sheep.
that. Oh, yes.
They're just sheep being sheep. How wonderful.
Totally. Just let them be. Let them be. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you,
Thank you,
Shatha.
Ruth.
I will pop in the show notes the um, website and social media handles for Animals Australia if anyone wants to
Yeah.
explore their work, your work. But yeah, that's that's the show, I guess, for today.
Wrap.
It's a wrap. Like, thank you so much for
My
taking the
absolute
time.
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And no doubt, I'm sure I'll even have you back on the show again one day to really dive into that spirituality and animals concepts. Like, let's do it.
It's
Yeah.
lollies for the soul. Yes.
Thank you very much, Shatha.
Thank you.
How amazing is Shatha? I really hope that you enjoyed the show today. I mean, we covered so much, and I love that we were able to go into the spirituality side of things because when we're working, when we're talking about the darker side of animal lives, it can be really, really challenging. And so I think it's important to have that tool and understand that that tool exists, that we can come back into our hearts and feel that beautiful state of peace and sending our love out to these animals and out to people like Shatha who are there on the ground doing this challenging work. So I really do hope that you enjoyed this show. I would love to hear how it landed with you. If you're not already a subscriber of the Natural Animal Podcast, please do so. I would really, really appreciate it. And if you would love to share a review, then that would be amazing as well, because the more people that listen to this show, what I plan for is that the more people who listen to this show, we are going to engender a greater love for all animals. And what a wonderful thing that would be. So, thank you. I can't thank you enough for listening. And I look forward to sharing my next show with you. You can find out all about Shatha's work with Animals Australia in the show notes. And until next time, have a glorious, glorious, glorious time. Thank you.